No one talks enough about the messy middle of obedience. We love to talk about obedience after the testimony is complete, after the doors open, after the blessing comes, after the breakthrough happens, after everything makes sense. We love the part where we can say, I obeyed God and look what he did. But what about the middle? What about the part where you obey God and things get more uncomfortable, not less? What about the part where people misunderstand you? What about the part where the decision makes sense in your spirit, but looks confusing in the natural? What about the part where you are crying, praying, second guessing, and asking God, did I really hear you? That is the messy middle. And I think a lot of us are unprepared for it because we assume obedience will immediately feel clear, supported, and obvious. But sometimes obedience feels like walking through fire. Sometimes obedience looks like disappointing people. Sometimes obedience looks like walking away from something that still looks good on paper. Sometimes obedience makes you look inconsistent. And sometimes obedience can cost you the image that you were trying so hard to protect. And I think that's where it gets real, because obedience is easy to romanticize until it asks something of you. It is one thing to obey God when the decision is celebrated. It's another thing to obey God when the people around you don't understand. It is one thing to obey when the outcome is clear. It is another thing to obey when you only have peace, but no proof. It is one thing to obey when it improves your reputation, and it's another thing to obey when it might make people question you. And I think that is why the messy middle is so important, because it reveals what still has power over us. Do I need people to agree with me before I obey? Do I need the optics to look good before I trust God? Do I need to be understood before I move? Do I need the outcome to be guaranteed before I surrender? Those questions will really expose you. I know they exposed me, and I had to confront how much I cared about being seen as responsible, wise, excellent, dependable, and strong. I had to confront how much I wanted people to understand my heart. I had to confront how uncomfortable I was with being misunderstood. And I don't think God was shaming me for that. I think he was freeing me, because if people's approval is required for my obedience, then people have become too powerful in my life. And that is a hard truth, but it's a necessary one. The messy middle of obedience is not always a sign that you miss God. Sometimes it is a sign that God is dealing with the parts of you that were still attached to comfort, control, people, reputation, and approval. Sometimes the shaking is not evidence that you're outside of God's will, but actually the shaking is what happens when everything that cannot come with you starts falling off. And so if you're in the messy middle, I want to encourage you to not confuse the discomfort with disobedience. Don't assume that because it's hard, it's wrong. Don't let the intensity of the process that God is taking you through make you doubt what God confirmed in peace. Obedience can be messy and still be holy. You can be misunderstood and still be aligned with God's will. You can be uncomfortable and still be in the will of God. And sometimes the messy middle is where your faith becomes real.